So, in this video, I wanted to talk about something. It's technically like a Chibi hour. I'm just inside of Destiny 2 right now, and I want to talk about something that's going to be changing in the next season that I understand why it's changing, but hear me out, okay? So, in the next season, we're going to be seeing some changes starting to happen to vendors, starting with our good old friend, Lord Shax. Hey, Shax. Hello. Anyways. There's going to be a big change, a somewhat big change to how reputation works with him and how we acquire loot as well through increasing our reputation, our valor inside of Crucible. And they showed off an image actually a while back where they showed off that as you level up, you'll get like materials like upgrade modules, enhancement prisms, and such. And engrams, obviously, to also acquire as well. And this sounds all good and dandy, but not only this, but that means that Crucible tokens will be obsolete. Instead of using reputation with tokens, it will be acquired through just leveling up Valor. Now, I have no idea if this means that the only way to acquire your level up stuff is going to the tower. Especially when it comes to resetting your Valor. That means that tower visits are going to be important. I could be wrong, but that sounds awful. It should be an automatic reset to 0 every single time, and it should stack up all your loot or whatever if you don't go back to the tower, waiting for when you go back to the tower and acquire all those things. I hate tower visits, like constantly going back and forth. No thank you. But with that out of the way, Crucible tokens are going bye-bye. They've actually made a statement that you should turn in your tokens right now before the next season because they're going to be turned into garbage. But here's the thing. Are tokens really the main reason why, like, the vendor is terrible and that they should remove tokens? Well, in my opinion, I feel like the idea of a token system is not necessarily bad. It's just the execution of what they went with was bad. Here's the thing. Tokens stack. They stack a lot. I mean, I have a lot of tokens, as you can see with this 2 stack of tokens right here. But there are people that have way more. Stacks upon stacks. Why do they have stacks upon stacks? Well, I mean, as you turn in the tokens, you're like, oh boy, I can't wait to turn my tokens in for some really cool loot, and as you turn them in, you realize that, oh, this is stuff that I've already acquired before. This is stuff that I don't care about. The value of the token is not anywhere close to anything valued, because of the fact that when you turn in your tokens, you're getting stuff that you don't care about. There is no value to the token. There's no value of turning in your tokens. I mean, look, I got an armor piece with 54 total stats. And if you play Destiny, you understand that this is garbage. Yes, it's got a ton of intellect, but 54? 54? You want stuff with 62 or, 64, 65s at least. 54 is garbage. But again, dare I say, and I ask you, is it really the token's fault? No, it is not. One of the biggest reasons is because there is no vendor refresh. There's no new weapons. Yes, there is new armor, but as you can clearly see, these are things that you don't acquire through turning in tokens. They're acquired at different means, and even then, you're not going to want to turn in all your tokens just to get specifically the armor. You probably want weapons. You want things that mean some big differences in your gameplay or whatever inside of the game. There is no reason to turn in tokens, really at all. In this case, the only reason to turn in tokens is because before they turn in the garbage. So what could they have done to innovate tokens to be better? Well, there's actually a currency that did token system right. Spoils of Conquest. I've talked about this in the Trials Chibi Hour that I've done in the past, where Spoils of Conquest is one of the greatest ideas, where it's a currency that's like a token system, that you stock up in whatever activity, and then when you get to the end of that raid with specifically spoils of conquest, you can turn in this currency to specifically to things that you want. That's awesome. So if you're getting screwed over by RNG, you can have more control over the RNG with this currency. That was the reason why this currency is valued. Granted, this currency also maxes out. You can't just stock up like you can with these tokens. And honestly, I think to myself, what if they had Spoils of Conquest for pretty much every single mode? Every single activity. Some kind of spoil, like Spoils of Crucible, Spoils of Vanguard, Spoils of Gambit, Spoils of Trials. And maybe some of these currencies will have different max currencies and such. I know one thing is that people would not like to see that currency disappear, as in refresh every season. I understand that point. I feel like Spoils of Conquest is a good example where having that refresh would make sense, because then when the new raid comes out, you'll just turn in all your stuff to get the specific things that you want, but at the same time, it's not cheap. It's not like you can get everything, right away. I don't think, at least. But regardless, it's not about making things fair. It's about making the game a lot more rewarding and feeling like the game is respecting your time and investment. When I turn in tokens, do I feel like I'm being rewarded with my time and investment inside of Crucible? Heck no. Hell, even when I turn in my Valor for like reset, when I max out my Valor, do I feel like the game is respecting my time and investment? No, it's not like I'm getting an Ascendant shard every time I refresh. It sucks. It sucks. I am tired of how this game sometimes is when it comes to respecting your time and investment into any activity inside the game. So how could they fix this? Well, they're on the right track with some things in the game that just need to get together and sit at the table and be like, we're friends. Spoils of Conquest is one thing. But let's look at another thing that works very well. Umbral Engrams and the Recaster. That is going to be making a return in the next season. But let's talk about the season arrival's way it did it. It was a vendor, technically, that had these tiers. If you remember, there were these perks. And as you were leveling up the vendor, you were getting benefits from that specific vendor, that specific currency, the Umbral Engrams. To the point where one of the perks was literally that when you turned in a Umbral Engram, a weapon would have double perks at the end, which, if you're like me, that's amazing. Having double perks for anything is great. I feel like having the chance of getting double perks in the middle tree and the end tree would be always good. In the Umbral Engram, the Recaster was only the last two. Lessening RNG is honestly one of the things that I feel like would go very well, especially with the sunsetting being a thing, because grind fatigue is a real problem, and it's happening mainly because the game is way too RNG. I mean, if you looked at the amount of rolls that you could have got for the Cold Front SMG during the Dawning, you'd be like, whoa, my gosh, am I really gonna get even close to the roll that I want? Probably not. It was tough. And that was only around for the time of Dawning, which was like 3 weeks, I believe. RNG is a pain in the butt. But at the same time, you don't want the game to just give you whatever right away. So in this case, having Spoils of Crucible be a currency, for example, where you could pick things from the vendor would be great. But what if, on top of this, as you're leveling up Valor, as you're leveling up in Reputation, you're able to get perks to unlock that refresh maybe every single season? There would be a goal that you can see, you can visibly see inside of the game. That's the biggest thing. When I was leveling up the Recaster, I felt like I was getting rewards. I felt like, oh, this is going to make my grind a whole lot better. They kind of have this even with the clan banner, except these perks, in my opinion, are kind of meh, at least. But if they had this for every vendor, where as you're playing the activity, you're rewarded better as well because, hey, we see that you're playing Crucible a lot. Here's these things that you unlock now, all these perks that make the grind even better for you. Hey, you like double perks? How about double perks on top of double perks? Like I said, where you get double perks at the end and the middle tree of perks. Maybe you can get double perks for everything. I don't know. Some crazy stuff. And then maybe you can use that Spoils of Crucible kind of token system to turn in for specific things that you want. Just like the Deepstone Crypt raid crate. Hey, maybe we can bring back weekly weapons that are on sale. Specific roles. But you have to have a decent amount of Spoils of Crucible. Have a currency that not only has value to what you're turning it in, but also makes you feel like, hey, I want to go out and get this currency. Hey, I want to go out and play the game, and I feel like there is a sensible achievement that I can get inside of whatever I'm doing. Because that's the big problem that I'm running into, is I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I don't see it. RNG and the focus on it in Destiny 2, it was working when there wasn't sunsetting. But now that there's sunsetting, it's just not working so well. I feel like if you're playing the game, you should get something that is going to respect your time in the game. And tokens kind of were that answer, but the problem is that there was no reason to turn them in. And if Bungie were to just be like, okay, now Crucible tokens are like the Spoils of Conquest, you can get things, then people would just get things super easily. There would be no reason of getting the currency anymore because you already have tons and tons of it. It's kind of like with legendary shards. People have constantly said that legendary shards are just, we have too much of them, and we need to somehow have something that's worth our legendary shards to acquire. But then that comes in the problem with newcomers where they don't have a giant surplus of legendary shards, so they have to grind a lot to get whatever that high amount. Like if there was like a thing that's 1,000 legendary shards or something, who knows? So having a brand new currency to replace tokens like how they have Spoils of Conquest would be a good idea. It worked with the raid. We never had a Spoils of Conquest. We never had a chest at the end of the raid. And I said that this would go well for every single vendor, every single activity. I just think about trials. What if there was a Spoils of Trials that, in my opinion, would stack and continuously stack until you went flawless and, well, it wouldn't disappear after you go flawless, but what if you could turn in that currency for whatever you want? And if you've been putting your effort inside of trials playing, at least you feel like you're accomplishing something where you're getting your time respected inside of trials, even if you don't go flawless. Because the problem is Billy over here is a god tier trials player that goes flawless within an hour. And he gets his loot, he gets his one adept weapon. But Jimmy over here is really trying. He's going in trials week after week after week, and for hours and hours and hours, probably leading up to a total of like 200 hours of trials. And then he finally goes flawless. You want to know the value of what he gets at the flawless chest? One weapon. The same as Billy, who went flawless within an hour. That's why people are fatigued in doing trials, for example. But if you have like a Spoils of Conquest for trials where, hey, you spent 200 hours in trials, here's a bunch of freaking Spoils of Trials for you that when you go to the chest, instead of you just getting one adept, you get all kinds of stuff. It's like when you walk you go to Chuck E. Cheese, and at the end you get all these tickets because you spent so much time at the skee ball. And you got tons and tons of tickets. You get to get all kinds of stuff. At least 7 plastic rings instead of 1. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know how I could say it better other than that. Where your time in the game is valued. Where you feel like there's a reason to keep going. If you're somebody that's struggling to go flawless, you should be respected with some kind of currency that will benefit you when you finally get to the end. Just like a raid. I mean, if you do the raid and you can't beat the boss, and you just do it every single week, and do the encounters before and beat those, you're stocking up on Spoils of Conquest that you can use at the end of the raid. If Crucible was giving you Spoils of Crucible after every match, every time you ranked up in Valor and you just stocked that stuff up to turn in for whatever you want, because maybe RNG has not been very nice to you, that'd be great. I just imagine a Destiny where we have vendor refresh. We have all these ideas that I just mentioned where you have perks to unlock to each vendor. You have spoils of whatever for that vendor, that activity. And the game is just feeling very rewarding to everybody. You just got to invest time in it. Destiny, the problem is that you can invest whatever amount of time that you want in the game, but does that necessarily mean that you're going to get something that is equal to the value of time that you put in the game that day? Probably not. I mean, I've done hours and hours inside of the dungeons in the past, where all I got in the end was garbage roll weapons and armor. So essentially all I got was legendary shards and weapon materials, and those themselves don't have much value. It sucks. Bungie needs to know this. Why do people farm Grandmasters? Well, because they get Ascendant shards, they get exotic armor pieces. They can farm that stuff. It doesn't take so long. It's difficult of an activity in a way, to where it's not super duper easy. You can't just breeze through it with ease in a way unless you perfect it. But it's rewarding. That's why people do it. Bungie needs to be looking at these kind of things, because them taking Crucible tokens and just removing them, sure, I understand, but maybe down the road we could see a better way of doing vendors in general, to where the game has a currency that's a lot more valuable, and on top of this, a lot more reason to play your game. Because you want that, right? Shax sure does. Shax is like, yeah, I want you to play Crucible. I don't care if you deal with some laggy players. We want you to play Crucible. Saint 14 is like, hey, casual players, play Trials. Yes, I know you might get stomped, and it might be hard for you to go flawless sometimes or whatever, but when you finally do, don't worry. You will have a giant chest, probably multiple chests, filled of spoils of Trials that you can turn in to the chest or something. I don't know. Something. I know the Trials one would be kind of weird because, like I said, then people who easily go flawless would just stock up Trials of Conquest for like the next season of new weapons and such. But that's why I'm thinking that maybe every season, specifically for Trials, there would be, you know how like right now we have these icons on the top left that let you know, hey, this is for this season. What if they had that for, like, Spoils of Trials specifically, and even the raid, too, where it's got an icon to let you know, hey, this was specifically for previous season. That doesn't necessarily mean that your currency is useless, but it means that, for example, Spoils of Conquest with the Beyond Light icon would only be usable for the Deepstone Crypt. For Trials, in this case, it would be only used for the weapons and armor from the previous season and the chest. So, like, when you go to the chest and you open it, if you won't be able to get the brand new stuff, you would be able to get the old stuff if you have a surplus of previous. That, I feel like, would be a great idea. I know that having more consumables and stuff is kind of bad, but, I mean, we have a modifications list thing that is essentially useless. Like, I don't even know why we have this. Can we just remove this and double stack it into here? Just a thought, Bungie. Just a thought. But either way, I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below, because I feel like I'm onto something. I feel like that would be pretty innovative on the vendors and such, and be kind of lit. Yeah. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. So regardless, I hope you have a chibi-tastic day, evening, night, wherever you are. And as usual, thank you so much for listening. Chibi out. I gotta go turn in 1,000,000 tokens.